At the promotion meeting, I smiled and said, "I can't wait for my raise." My husband, the boss, laughed. "Raise? Oh no, I gave it to Hazel. HR confirmed I wasn't even considered." Hazel grinned. "Forgot to mention it." That afternoon I cleared my desk. But what I did afterward, nobody saw it coming. "I can't wait for my raise," I announced to the conference room, my portfolio of achievements heavy in my hands. Jasper looked up from his phone for the first time since I'd walked in, and the expression on his face made my chest tighten. Not pride. Not approval. Amusement. Pure, undisguised amusement at my expense. Raise. He set down his phone with deliberate slowness. "Oh no, Aurora. I gave it to Hazel." The conference room's fluorescent lights suddenly felt too bright, too harsh, illuminating every face turned toward me with varying degrees of discomfort and pity. Bethany from HR cleared her throat and slid a folder across the mahogany table. Her manicured nails tapped against the cover twice before withdrawing. "You weren't even considered for the position, Aurora. The decision was made last week." I stood there, portfolio still clutched against my chest, watching Hazel Morrison walk through the glass doors in her new red heels. The same heels she'd shown me last month, asking if they were too much for the office. I'd told her they were perfect for making an impression. She caught my eye and offered the slightest shrug. "Forgot to mention it," she said, settling into the leather chair directly across from where I stood. "Before we continue, if you've ever been overlooked for a promotion you deserved, please consider subscribing. It's free and helps us share stories of women who refuse to accept less than their worth." The portfolio in my hands contained 8 months of evidence that I'd single-handedly saved this company from hemorrhaging clients. The Campbell Industries campaign alone, which I'd worked on until 3 a.m. for 2 straight weeks, had retained a contract worth $2 million this quarter. The Morrison Hotels crisis that I'd resolved before it hit the media. The complete overhaul of our digital marketing strategy that increased engagement by 340%. But none of that mattered now. I set the portfolio on the table without opening it. "I see. Well then, I'll need the afternoon to transition my current projects." "That won't be necessary," Hazel interjected, her voice carrying a confidence I'd never heard before. "I've already been briefed on everything. Jasper's been bringing me up to speed for the past month." The past month. While I'd been preparing my promotion presentation, practicing my pitch in the shower, calculating how the raise would finally allow us to renovate the kitchen, my husband had been secretly training my replacement. The same husband who'd listened to me rehearse my talking points over dinner. Who'd nodded encouragingly when I'd shown him my portfolio layout. Who'd made love to me last night without once mentioning that this meeting would be my professional execution. I managed to walk out of that conference room without saying another word. My desk sat in the corner of the marketing department, a cubicle barely large enough for my chair and filing cabinet despite my unofficial role as the person who actually ran things. Through Hazel's office window, the actual marketing director's office that had sat mostly empty for 2 years, I could see shopping bags from her lunch hour sprees still piled on her credenza. Timothy was waiting by my desk holding his tablet with that familiar look of controlled panic. "Aurora, the Campbell Industries presentation needs final approval before." "Give it to Hazel," I said, pulling my personal items from the drawers. The orchid I'd nursed through 2 winters. The coffee mug Emma had given me that read, "World's Best Multitasker." The framed photo from our company retreat where I'd been named Employee of the Quarter for the 3rd consecutive time. But Hazel doesn't know the Campbell account. She's never even met their team. I paused, looking at Timothy's earnest face. He was 24, fresh from graduate school, brilliant but still naive enough to believe hard work guaranteed recognition. Then I guess she'd better learn quickly. The drive home took 17 minutes. I counted every red light, every turn signal, every mile that put distance between me and that building where I'd given everything and received nothing in return. Our house sat on a tree-lined street in Portland's Laurelhurst neighborhood, the kind of place successful couples bought when they were building their futures together. The kitchen still needed renovating. Now it would stay exactly as it was. I set the box of my belongings on the dining table and noticed the Campbell Industries contract sitting on Jasper's home office desk. The margins were filled with handwritten notes. Not Jasper's angular scrawl that I knew from 12 years of marriage. These loops and curves belonged to Hazel. Dates going back 6 weeks. Strategy notes about approaches I'd developed. Client relationship details I'd painstakingly built. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma at college. "How did the big meeting go, Mom? Did you get it?" I stared at those words, thinking about the tuition bills, the student loans we'd co-signed, the promises we'd made about supporting her dreams while I'd apparently been too blind to see my own being methodically dismantled. The house felt different already. Not like a home where two successful people built their life together, but like a stage where I'd been performing the role of supportive wife while missing all the signs that the show was ending. The Campbell Industries presentation I'd perfected at 5:30 that morning still sat in my laptop, ready for a meeting that would never happen. The coffee maker still held the remnants of Jasper's perfect 2 sugars no cream brew that I'd made while believing we were partners. 3 months I'd had that Thursday afternoon circled in red on my calendar. 3 months of believing that excellence would be rewarded, that dedication meant something, that the person sleeping beside me every night actually saw my value beyond my ability to fix problems and save accounts while someone else got the credit. I opened my laptop and began making a list. Not of achievements or presentations or campaigns that had saved the company millions. This list was different. This one started with every password, every client contact, every system I'd built that they didn't even know existed. Because while Jasper thought he'd simply denied me a raise, what he'd actually done was light a fuse. They just didn't know it was burning yet. The list sat on my laptop screen, cursor blinking at the end of the last password I'd documented. My hands moved to close the computer, but something made me pause. The house felt too quiet, the kind of silence that presses against your ears and makes you hear your own heartbeat. Jasper would be home in 2 hours, and I needed to decide what kind of evening this would be. The dutiful wife preparing dinner, or the woman who just had her career detonated by the person who was supposed to have her back. My phone vibrated against the dining table. Timothy again. Morrison Hotels is in full panic mode. Hazel told them you quit without notice. They're threatening to pull the contract. I stared at the message, feeling something shift in my chest. Not anger exactly, but a cold clarity that made everything sharper. Hazel had already started her narrative. Aurora the deserter. Aurora the unprofessional. Aurora who couldn't handle not getting her way. I typed back, not my problem anymore, but deleted it without sending. Timothy didn't deserve coldness meant for others. The front door opened at 6:47, Jasper's usual time when he wasn't working late with associates or in meetings I now wondered about. His keys hit the bowl by the entrance with their familiar clink. His footsteps moved through the foyer, paused at the dining room where my box of office belongings still sat, then continued to the kitchen where I stood chopping vegetables for a salad neither of us would eat. "Hey," he said, loosening his tie. "What's for dinner?" The casual normalcy of it made my hand tighten on the knife. He moved behind me to get a beer from the refrigerator, his cologne filling the space between us. The same cologne I'd bought him for Christmas, selected because it reminded me of confidence and success. Now it smelled like betrayal, pretending everything was fine. "Jasper." I set the knife down carefully, turning to face him. "We need to talk about today." He popped the beer cap against the counter edge, a habit I'd asked him to stop because it left marks on the granite. "What about today?" "The promotion meeting." "Hazel. The fact that you've been training her for my job for a month while I prepared a presentation you knew was pointless." He sighed, the kind of exhale that suggested I was being dramatic. "Or we discussed this possibility. The board has concerns about appearances. A husband promoting his wife doesn't look good, especially with the Fletcher acquisition coming up." The Fletcher acquisition I structured. The one where I spent 3 weeks courting their CMO to make sure the transition would be smooth. Which is exactly why we need someone like Hazel in that role. Someone without personal connections that could be seen as conflicts of interest. He took a long drink of his beer, avoiding my eyes. "This is what's best for the company." "Someone like Hazel who asked me last week what ROI stands for?" His jaw tightened. "She's learning. On my frameworks. Using my client relationships. Taking credit for campaigns I built at 3 in the morning while you slept beside me. That's how business works, Aurora. You knew that when we got married. You knew there would be complicated situations." I laughed, surprising both of us. Not a bitter laugh or a sad one, but genuine amusement at the mental gymnastics required to make this my fault. Complicated situations. That's what we're calling it when you systematically hand over my work to someone else while lying to my face about it. I never lied. Every morning for the past month, You watched me prepare for that meeting. You listened to me practice my presentation over dinner. You made love to me last night knowing that today you would humiliate me in front of the entire leadership team. What would you call that? He set his beer on the counter, the condensation already forming a ring on the granite. I'd call it protecting you. Do you know what people say about us? About how you only have your position because of me. This way, when you succeed, it's on your own merit. When I succeed, I've already succeeded. Every campaign that's kept us profitable this quarter has my fingerprints all over it. The only thing you've protected me from is getting credit for my own work. The doorbell rang, sharp and intrusive. We stood frozen, neither moving to answer it. It rang again, followed by knocking. That's probably Margaret, I said, remembering my sister's text about dropping by with some books she'd borrowed. I'll get it. But when I opened the door, Hazel Morrison stood on my porch. She'd changed from the red heels into designer sneakers, traded her power suit for yoga clothes that probably cost more than most people's rent. Her smile was different now, more genuine, like we were girlfriends about to grab coffee. Hi, Aurora. I hope I'm not interrupting dinner. Behind me, I heard Jasper's footsteps approaching. Hazel, what are you doing here? You left your laptop at the office, she said to him, not me, producing his MacBook from her oversized purse. You said you needed it for the Fletcher presentation tomorrow. I thought I'd drop it by on my way to Pilates. On her way to Pilates. Our house was 15 minutes out of the way from the office to any Pilates studio in Portland. I watched Jasper take the laptop, his fingers brushing hers in the exchange. The gesture was small, practiced, familiar. Thanks, he said. I completely forgot. No problem. Hazel's eyes flicked to me, then back to him. About tomorrow's presentation, should I use Aurora's deck or create something fresh? Create something fresh, he said without hesitation. We need a new perspective. She nodded, satisfied. Great. I'll see you at 7 for our breakfast meeting. Her attention shifted to me fully for the first time. Aurora, I'm sorry about today. I know it must have been unexpected. But I'm sure you understand it's what's best for everyone. The words were perfectly chosen. Not an admission of wrongdoing, not an acknowledgement of what she'd taken, just the kind of corporate sympathy that meant nothing and cost less. I could have responded with anger, with accusations, with the dozen questions burning in my throat about how long she'd been planning this, how many of my ideas she'd already claimed, how it felt to steal someone else's life's work. That I smiled. The same smile I'd perfected in conference rooms and client dinners, the one that gave away nothing while suggesting everything was under control. Of course, Hazel. I understand perfectly. She blinked, perhaps expecting tears or shouting or some other display of emotion she could report back to the office tomorrow. When none came, she shifted uncomfortably. Well, I should get to class. After she left, Jasper closed the door and turned to me. See? She's trying to be professional about this. Professional, I repeated. Is that what we're calling showing up at your employee's house in workout clothes to deliver a laptop you could have survived without until tomorrow? Don't make this something it's not. But I was already walking away, heading upstairs to our bedroom. In the closet, I pulled out my suitcase, the one we'd bought for our honeymoon 12 years ago. It still had the luggage tag from Maui, faded but readable. Paradise Found, it said. I almost laughed at the irony. What are you doing? Jasper stood in the doorway, his beer forgotten downstairs. Getting some space to think. Aurora, don't be dramatic. It's just a job. I paused, holding the sweater Emma had given me last Christmas. You're right. It's just a job. And this is just a marriage where my husband orchestrates my professional humiliation while his new protégé drops by our house in yoga pants. Nothing dramatic about that at all. The suitcase sat half-packed on our bed, Jasper watching from the doorway as I folded another blouse. Neither of us had slept. He'd stayed downstairs most of the night while I lay awake calculating 12 years of marriage against 8 months of lies. By Friday morning, the arithmetic still didn't balance. My phone buzzed at 6 a.m. with an automated message from IT. Your remote access has been terminated. Please contact your administrator for questions. I grabbed my company laptop from the nightstand, fingers flying across the keyboard before they could lock me out completely. The download bar crept across the screen. 8 months of emails, project files, client correspondence. Everything that proved what I'd built and what had been stolen. An email from 3 months ago stopped me cold. Jasper to Hazel, marked confidential. Aurora is too emotionally invested in her campaigns to see the bigger picture. We need someone who can separate feelings from strategy. Let's discuss your transition timeline over dinner Thursday. Thursday. I remembered that Thursday. I'd been visiting my mother in Seattle, helping her recover from hip surgery. Jasper had said he was too busy with quarterly reports to come with me. The download finished just as the laptop screen went black, access revoked. But I had what I needed. I took screenshots with my phone while scrambling eggs Jasper wouldn't eat, maintaining the bizarre normalcy of a morning routine while our marriage dissolved in real time. He sat at the kitchen island pretending to read news on his tablet, both of us playing roles in a show that had already closed. I'll stay at Margaret's for a few days, I said, sliding eggs onto a plate I knew would go untouched. This is ridiculous, Aurora. You're overreacting to a professional decision. My phone rang before I could respond. Margaret's name flashed on the screen and I almost laughed at the timing. Hey Max. Don't you hey Max me. I just saw your LinkedIn post about exploring new opportunities. What happened? And don't give me corporate speak. I'm your sister. I glanced at Jasper, who'd gone rigid at his tablet. It's complicated. Can I call you back? Or wait. Before you hang up, I need to tell you something. Remember 6 weeks ago when I was downtown for that conference? I saw Jasper at Romano's with that woman from his office, the one with the red hair. Hazel. The kitchen suddenly felt too small. Romano's. They were at the back corner table, the one you always say is too romantic for business dinners. She was laughing at something he said, touching his hand. I figured you knew about the meeting, but something felt off about it. 6 weeks ago. I'd been working late on the Morrison Hotel's crisis, eating takeout at my desk while Jasper was supposedly at a board dinner. Thanks for telling me, Margaret. I'll call you later. After I hung up, Jasper's tablet lay flat on the counter, his knuckles white as he gripped the edge. It wasn't what you're thinking. I'm not thinking anything. I'm just connecting dots that should have been obvious months ago. I spent the rest of Friday turning our dining room into an investigation center. The table I'd bought for hosting dinner parties became a landscape of evidence. 3 distinct piles emerged as the sun set over Portland, each more damning than the last. The first pile contained Hazel's expense reports for the past 6 months. Client dinners at restaurants our clients never visited. Conference registrations for events she never attended. Travel receipts that didn't match any scheduled meetings. Nearly $40,000 in questionable expenses, all approved by Jasper without question. The second pile was my proof of ownership. Every Campbell Industries document with my metadata embedded showing creation dates, revision histories, my digital signature on every strategic decision. The presentation Hazel claimed to have developed last month? I'd created the template in January, refined it through 17 versions, each one time-stamped and tracked. But the third pile made my hands shake. Security badge records I'd saved months ago for an efficiency audit, never submitted because I'd found something else entirely. Jasper and Hazel's badges swiping into the executive floor at 11 p.m. on 7 different Saturdays. Always when I was in Seattle with my mother. Always leaving within minutes of each other around 2 a.m. By midnight, the evidence covered every inch of the table. My phone had been silent except for work contacts asking why I'd disappeared and Emma texting about her classes, unaware her parents' marriage was unraveling thread by thread. I couldn't tell her yet. Not until I understood the full scope of what I was looking at. Sunday arrived gray and drizzling, Portland's signature weather matching my mood. I was deep in spreadsheets when my phone rang with a number I recognized but rarely saw. Dennis Palmer, the longest-serving board member and one of the few people who'd known me before I became Jasper's wife. Aurora. His voice was careful, measured. I heard about Thursday's meeting. News travels fast. Indeed it does. Listen, I'm calling from my personal phone for a reason. There are changes coming at the company and you should protect your interests. I set down the Campbell Industries file I'd been reviewing. What kind of changes? I can't say much, but not everyone on the board agrees with recent personnel decisions. Some of us remember who actually brought in the Morrison Hotel's account. Who saved Campbell Industries from walking away. Dennis, are you trying to tell me something? He paused long enough that I thought the call had dropped. I'm telling you that workplace relationships that cross professional boundaries concern the board. Especially when they affect company performance and shareholder value. Document everything, Aurora. Everything. I already am. Good. And Aurora? You might want to review the company's ethics policy, particularly the section about disclosure of intimate relationships between executives and direct reports. The line went dead. I stared at my phone, then at the security badge records showing those late-night office visits. Dennis had just confirmed what the evidence suggested, but my mind had been refusing to process. This wasn't just about professional betrayal or even marital deception. Jasper and Hazel's relationship had crossed lines that could destroy them both. I picked up the Campbell Industries contract, noting Hazel's handwritten margins again. Her notes weren't strategic insights. They were personal reminders. Jay says emphasize innovation. Check with Jay before finalizing. Jay likes this approach. Jay. Not Jasper. Not Mr. Wallace. Just Jay, with a familiarity that predated her promotion by months. The truth wasn't unraveling anymore. It had already unraveled completely, leaving me holding threads of a life I thought I'd understood. But understanding and accepting were different things entirely. And what I'd do with this knowledge? That was another question altogether. The question of what to do with this knowledge kept me awake Sunday night, staring at the ceiling while rain drummed against the windows. By Monday morning I had my answer. If they wanted to play corporate games, I'd show them what happened when they underestimated their opponent. The coffee shop on Burnside was deliberately chosen, far enough from the office district that we wouldn't run into anyone, busy enough that our conversation would disappear into the general noise. Rebecca Chin arrived first, looking polished despite having been unemployed for 4 months since her sudden departure as CFO. She'd lost weight, her suit hanging looser than it should, but her handshake remained firm. "Thank you for meeting me," I said, settling into the corner booth I'd claimed earlier. "When you called, I wondered how long it would take before someone else saw what was happening there." Rebecca wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. "Let me guess. Jasper finally showed his true colors?" "What do you mean?" She laughed, but there was no humor in it. The monthly finance meetings that somehow always ran late when his wife was traveling. The suggestions that we discuss budget projections over drinks. The way he'd stand too close when reviewing reports, his hand on my lower back. She met my eyes directly. "I documented everything, Aurora. Every inappropriate comment, every meeting that crossed lines. HR did nothing because Bethany reports to him." My stomach turned, but I kept my expression neutral. "Why didn't you come to me? You were his wife." What was I supposed to say? "Your husband keeps trying to corner me in empty conference rooms." She pulled out a flash drive from her purse. "But I kept records. Financial ones too. Hazel's department shows profits on paper, but the actual numbers tell a different story." The flash drive contained spreadsheets that made my evidence look amateur. Hazel had been billing hours to client accounts for work never performed, shifting expenses between departments to hide losses, claiming wins on campaigns that had actually failed. $3 million in fabricated success over 18 months. My second meeting was with Jennifer Park, former head of strategic planning, who'd resigned suddenly 6 months ago. She chose a table near the window, constantly checking the street as if expecting someone to appear. "Hazel Morrison is a fraud," she said without preamble. "Every successful campaign she's claimed came from someone else. She can't even write a basic creative brief without help." When I pointed this out to Jasper, he suggested I was being territorial. When I provided proof, he said I was creating a hostile work environment. She slid a folder across the table. Email threads showing her incompetence, client complaints about her handling of accounts, and my termination agreement with its very generous silence clause that I'm currently violating. The third meeting almost didn't happen. Sandra Williams, former VP of Operations, initially refused to meet, but when I mentioned Rebecca and Jennifer's names, she agreed. We sat in her car in the parking structure, engine running. "I lasted longer than the others because I'm older, less threatening," Sandra said, her voice steady despite her white knuckles on the steering wheel. "But when I discovered Hazel was using company credit cards for personal expenses and reported it, Jasper accused me of targeting her due to jealousy. Me, jealous of a woman half my age who can't calculate basic ROI. She handed me a manila envelope. Copies of the credit card statements. Designer clothes, jewelry, weekend trips, all buried in legitimate expense reports. All approved by your husband. By the time I got home, I had enough ammunition to destroy them both." But ammunition without strategy was just noise. I spent the rest of Monday crafting the perfect email to the board, 17 drafts until each word accomplished exactly what I needed. Not accusations but concerns. Not attacks but questions. Professional worry about patterns that might affect shareholder value. The email highlighted correlations without stating causation. Hazel's promotion timeline matched suspicious spending increases. Client retention had dropped 20% since she'd taken on larger responsibilities, but the losses were hidden by redistributing accounts. Employee turnover in the marketing department had tripled, with exit interviews citing leadership concerns that were never addressed. I attached Rebecca's financial analysis, scrubbed of anything that could identify her as the source. The numbers would speak for themselves to anyone who understood basic accounting. Which thankfully the board did even if Jasper assumed they didn't. Tuesday brought an unexpected interruption. Emma stood at my door with her backpack and a concerned expression, having driven up from Eugene without warning. "Mom, your texts have been weird. What's going on?" I looked at my daughter, 21 years old, with her father's eyes but my determination, and made a decision. "Come in. I'll show you." She surveyed the dining room table covered in evidence, the laptop with multiple spreadsheets open, the legal pads filled with timeline notes. "Is Dad having an affair?" "Among other things." "With Hazel?" She didn't sound surprised. "She's always hanging around at family events, laughing too loud at his jokes. Last Thanksgiving she called him Jazzy." I wanted to throw cranberry sauce at her. "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because you seemed happy." "Because I thought maybe I was imagining things." He picked up one of the security badge reports. "But this isn't imagination, is it?" Emma spent the next 3 hours setting up an encrypted email system, a VPN, and secure cloud storage for my documents. "Computer science major, remember?" she said, typing commands I didn't understand. "If you're going to war, at least protect your communications." We worked together until past midnight, mother and daughter united in purpose. She admitted things I hadn't known. How Jasper would diminish my accomplishments at dinners, claiming my strategies were really his ideas simplified for implementation. How he told her boyfriend last Christmas that I was good at execution but needed help with vision. "You're the smartest person I know, Mom. He just couldn't stand that you were smarter than him." Wednesday afternoon found me at the grocery store, maintaining the pretense of normalcy by buying wine for book club. My phone rang as I loaded Pinot Grigio into my cart. Marcus Whitman, CEO of Meridian Global, our biggest competitor. "Mrs. Wallace? I've been following your situation with interest. We're expanding our marketing division and could use someone with your expertise." I wheeled my cart to the parking lot, rain starting to fall as I found my car. "How did you?" "Portland's business community is smaller than you think. Word travels when talent becomes available. I'm offering you the director position, but that's just the start. Bring me 3 major accounts and I'll make you VP within 6 months." Standing in that parking lot, rain streaming down my windshield, I negotiated the kind of package I'd never have dared ask for at Jasper's company. Signing bonus, equity shares, and yes, the ability to approach select clients about transitioning their accounts. "I'll take it," I said, watching the rain wash everything clean. "Excellent. Can you start Monday?" "Absolutely." The fuse was lit. The email to the board would go out Thursday night. My resignation letter was already drafted. The evidence was backed up in 3 locations. All that remained was watching it burn. Thursday night at 11:47 p.m., I hit send on the email to the board members, then closed my laptop and went to bed. There was nothing more to do but wait. The fuse had been lit, and by Monday morning, the explosion would be impossible to ignore. I woke at 6 a.m. to 17 text messages. Timothy's came in rapid succession starting at 7:43. Emergency board meeting called. Jasper looks like he hasn't slept. Linda just walked out. What is happening? Linda Martinez had been Jasper's executive assistant for 3 years, the kind of unflappable professional who could handle any crisis with calm efficiency. According to Timothy's breathless updates, she'd been called into the boardroom at 8 a.m., questioned about the security badge records, and asked to explain the numerous late-night office entries. She'd stood up, removed her company badge, placed it on the table, and walked out without saying a word. Her silence said everything. By 9 a.m., more texts flooded in from contacts throughout the building. The board had been sequestered for 2 hours. Hazel had been seen crying in the bathroom. Bethany from HR was frantically making phone calls from the lobby because she'd been locked out of the executive conference room. I made coffee in my kitchen, Emma still asleep upstairs, and opened my laptop to execute phase 2. The LinkedIn article I'd been refining for days was ready. When Merit Meets Politics, a case study in corporate leadership failure. No names, no company identifiers, just a carefully crafted analysis of what happens when personal relationships override professional judgment in executive decisions. I published it at exactly noon when I knew most professionals would be checking their feeds during lunch. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within 30 minutes, 47 comments had appeared. Women shared stories of being passed over for less qualified male colleagues. Men described watching incompetent friends of leadership get promoted while real talent walked out the door. The comment thread became a collective therapy session for everyone who'd ever been professionally betrayed. But at 2:17 p.m. the comment that mattered most appeared. Robert Campbell, CEO of Campbell Industries, our most valuable client, wrote simply, "Leadership transitions should never compromise project continuity or client relationships. Concerned about recent changes affecting our account management. Would appreciate direct communication from Aurora Wallace regarding our ongoing campaigns." My phone rang within minutes. Robert's direct line. "Aurora, I just learned about your departure. This is unacceptable. You're the only reason we've stayed with that company. We've invested $2 million based on strategies you developed. I understand your concerns, Robert. The transition happened quickly. There is no transition. Hazel Morrison called me this morning claiming she'd been managing our account all along. She couldn't answer basic questions about our target demographics. She didn't even know we'd shifted our focus to the Southwest market last quarter. I'm sure she'll get up to speed quickly," I said, maintaining professional neutrality while knowing Hazel couldn't get up to speed on a stationary bicycle. "We need you, Aurora. If you're available for independent consulting, Campbell Industries would like to retain your services immediately. I've actually accepted a position with Meridian Global. I start Monday." There was a pause, then a laugh. Marcus Whitman finally got smart. Good for him. And good for us. We'll be reaching out to Meridian about transitioning our account. The dominoes were falling faster than I'd anticipated. By 3 p.m., Hazel had sent a company-wide email that would become legendary for its complete lack of self-awareness. She claimed credit for the Campbell Industries relationship, the Morrison Hotel's crisis resolution, and 3 other major wins that had my digital fingerprints all over them. What she didn't realize was that I'd already forwarded the original project files, complete with metadata showing creation dates and revision histories, to those very clients that morning. Morrison Hotels called Jasper directly at 3:45. Timothy, who sat near Jasper's office, texted me fragments of the conversation he could hear through the door. "No, sir, I understand your concerns. Yes, Aurora was integral. We can ensure continuity. Please don't make any hasty decisions." Sterling Communications followed at 4:15. Then Pinnacle Brands at 4:42. 3 major accounts threatening to walk, each worth millions in annual revenue. Each specifically citing concerns about losing their primary strategic contact. Me. Emma came downstairs around 4, finding me at the dining table surrounded by contracts from Meridian and resignation paperwork for Jasper's company. "The internet is loving your article," she said, showing me her phone. "It's been shared 800 times. Someone started a hashtag Merit Over Politics. I didn't mean to start a movement." "Maybe not, but you're giving people permission to tell their own stories. That matters, Mom." At 6:27 I heard Jasper's car in the driveway. Emma looked at me questioning. "Want me to leave?" "Stay. Witness this." He came through the door like a hurricane that had exhausted itself, all spent fury and depleted energy. His tie was loose, his hair disheveled, his face the gray color of someone watching their world collapse in real time. He didn't acknowledge Emma, just focused on me with desperate intensity. "Aurora, we need to talk. We're talking. Privately. Emma stays. She should know who her father really is." He glanced at our daughter, then back to me. "Fine. The board is conducting a full investigation. Linda quit. 3 clients are threatening to leave. You've destroyed everything we built." "Everything you built?" I have 8 months of documentation proving I built it while you were busy doing whatever you were doing with Hazel at 11 p.m. on Saturdays. His face went white. That's not. I have the security records, Jasper. The expense reports. The emails where you called me too emotionally invested, while planning to hand my job to your girlfriend. She's not. Stop. I pulled out a manila folder, Catherine Volkov's article printed and highlighted. This publishes tomorrow. Business Pacific Quarterly. 17 employees, all quoted anonymously describing the toxic culture you created. Rebecca Chen's mysterious departure. Jennifer Park's sudden resignation. Sandra Williams's silence agreement. It's all here. He sank into a chair, scanning the pages. Each highlighted quote made him flinch. A culture where personal relationships determined professional advancement. Female executives pushed out for questioning incompetent leadership. Expense irregularities overlooked when the right person was involved. They can't publish this. I'll sue. With what money? Once the board sees the financial documents Rebecca provided, you'll be too busy defending yourself to sue anyone. You vindictive. Careful, Emma interrupted, her voice steel. That's my mother you're about to insult. The woman who saved your company while you were playing executive with your side piece. He looked between us, perhaps finally understanding that he'd lost more than just a corporate game. Aurora, please. I'll give you the promotion. 50% raise. Hazel will be gone by tomorrow. I stood, gathering my papers. I've already accepted a position with Meridian Global. Director of Strategic Marketing. They're also interested in acquiring several of your clients who've expressed concern about their current account management. You can't do that. Non-compete clause. The one my lawyer says is unenforceable since you violated the company's ethics policy? That non-compete clause. He had nothing left to say. The man who'd always had an answer, an excuse, a deflection, sat silent in the ruins of his own making. Emma and I left him there, walking upstairs to pack the rest of my things. Tomorrow Catherine's article would hit newsstands. Wednesday I'd start at Meridian. By Friday, Campbell Industries would officially transition their account. The dominoes hadn't just fallen. They'd created a pattern that spelled out exactly who was responsible for their collapse. Emma and I packed the last box in silence, the sound of tape sealing cardboard echoing through the empty bedroom. The house felt hollow already, 12 years of memories boxed and labeled, ready for transport to separate futures. As we carried boxes to the rental truck, neither of us looked back at the home where our family had pretended to thrive while slowly decomposing from the inside. Monday morning arrived crisp and bright, the kind of Portland spring day that made everything feel possible. The Meridian Global building rose 30 floors of gleaming glass and steel in the Pearl District, a testament to what competent leadership could build. My new assistant, David Park, met me in the lobby with a genuine smile and a tablet full of the day's priorities. Ms. Wallace, welcome to Meridian. Your office is ready on the 22nd floor. Corner suite with a view of Mount Hood on clear days. The elevator ride felt like ascending to a different life. When the doors opened, Marcus Whitman stood waiting, coffee in hand. Aurora, perfect timing. Campbell Industries signed their contract this morning. They specifically stipulated that you personally oversee all strategic initiatives. Robert Campbell called you irreplaceable. My office was everything my old cubicle wasn't. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a desk that belonged in an architecture magazine, and a sitting area for client meetings. On the desk sat a nameplate, Aurora Wallace, Director of Strategic Marketing. No one's wife. No one's afterthought. Just my name and my achievement. I sat in the leather chair, running my fingers across the smooth desk surface and pulled off my wedding ring. The thin band of white skin underneath looked vulnerable, unprotected. I placed the ring in the top drawer, next to a photo Emma had insisted I bring. Just the two of us at her high school graduation, both laughing at something off camera. No Jasper. No pretense. Just us. 3 more clients called this morning, David informed me, setting down a list. Morrison Hotels wants to discuss transitioning their account. Sterling Communications is ready to sign. Pinnacle Brands requested a proposal by Friday. Tuesday morning I arrived early to find my email flooded with messages. The Business Pacific Quarterly article had published online at midnight, and print copies were hitting newsstands across Portland. Catherine Volkov had crafted a masterpiece of investigative journalism that never mentioned names but painted a picture so clear that everyone in our industry knew exactly who and what she was describing. The article detailed a prominent Portland marketing executive whose incompetence was hidden by taking credit for others' work, supported by a company president who valued personal relationships over performance. 17 anonymous employees described a culture of fear, favoritism, and failure disguised as success. The financial analysis, carefully sourced from internal documents, showed a pattern of deception that bordered on fraud. My phone buzzed constantly. Former colleagues sending gratitude and support. Competitors offering positions. Clients confirming their decision to follow me to Meridian. But the message that stopped me cold came from Bethany in HR. Aurora, I'm deeply sorry for my role in what happened. I knew it was wrong but was too afraid of losing my job to speak up. You deserved better. If you have any advice for someone trying to leave a toxic situation, I would be grateful. I wrote back carefully. Document everything. Find a labor attorney. Don't sign anything without legal review. You know the truth, use it to protect yourself and others. Good luck. Wednesday evening, Emma drove up from Eugene to help me move into my new apartment. It was smaller than the house, a 2-bedroom in the Alberta Arts District, but every square foot was mine. We hung my awards on the living room wall. Employee of the Quarter plaques that Jasper had relegated to the garage. Certificates of achievement he'd said made the house look cluttered. This place already feels more like home, Emma said, unpacking kitchen boxes. No pretending. No walking on eggshells. Just you being you. We sat on the floor eating Chinese takeout from paper containers, surrounded by boxes and bubble wrap, when Emma set down her chopsticks with unusual deliberation. Mom, I need to tell you something. I'm changing my name. What do you mean? I'm taking your maiden name. Wallace. I've already started the paperwork. She met my eyes directly. I don't want to carry the name of a man who could betray you like that. I want the name of the woman who stood up and fought back. The woman who built something from ashes. My throat tightened. Emma, he's still your father. Biologically, yes. But you're my role model. You're the parent who taught me that integrity matters more than convenience, that truth matters more than comfort. I want to be Emma Wallace. Thursday's lunch with Catherine Volkov was supposed to be celebratory. Her article had already been picked up by 3 national publications, and she was writing a follow-up about women rebuilding after professional betrayal. We sat at a riverside restaurant watching boats navigate the Willamette, when the courier appeared. Aurora Wallace? He handed me an envelope that I recognized immediately. Legal documents. Divorce papers. Catherine started to excuse herself, but I waved her to stay. You might as well witness this. It's part of the story. The papers were straightforward. Jasper wanted a quick, quiet dissolution. He'd keep the house, I'd keep my retirement accounts. The prenup I'd insisted on 12 years ago, despite his protests that it showed a lack of trust, protected my inheritance and future earnings. His company stock, which had dropped 15% since Tuesday's article, would be divided according to our original agreement. Most of his net worth had evaporated with the company's plummeting valuation. I signed every page without hesitation, using the same confident signature I'd used that morning on 3 new client contracts worth $8 million in annual revenue. Any regrets? Catherine asked gently. I looked at my bare ring finger, at the divorce papers that would end 12 years of marriage, at my new business card that represented a fresh beginning. Regret suggests I'd do something differently. Every choice led me here, to a corner office, loyal clients, and a daughter who's proud to share my name. The only thing I regret is not seeing the truth sooner. That evening, I stood at my new apartment window, watching the sun set over Portland's skyline. My phone showed 17 new client inquiries, a meeting request from the mayor's office about leading a women's professional development initiative, and a text from Emma. Proud of you, Mom. The Wallace women don't just survive. We thrive. The city lights began to twinkle as darkness fell, and I realized I wasn't watching the end of something. I was watching the beginning. The phoenix had risen and she was just getting started. The night stretched ahead of me, Portland's lights creating constellations against the darkness. I closed my laptop, gathered my things, and headed home to my apartment where no one would judge my success or diminish my achievements. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new clients, new victories. But tonight I would simply be Aurora Wallace, a woman who had rebuilt herself from betrayal into something stronger. 6 months passed in a blur of successes that felt earned rather than stolen. The Pacific Northwest Marketing Summit invitation arrived on a Tuesday morning in October, requesting me as their keynote speaker for the annual conference. 3,000 industry professionals would gather to hear about innovation, leadership, and building ethical corporate cultures. They wanted me to address the topic of transparent meritocracies in modern business. Standing backstage at the convention center, I adjusted my microphone and watched the previous speaker wrap up. Through a gap in the curtains, I could see the audience filling the auditorium. And there, 7 rows back on the left side, sat Jasper. His hair had gone gray at the temples, his suit hung loose on a frame that had lost weight, and his posture carried the defeat of someone who'd lost everything they'd built on lies. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer's voice boomed, "please welcome Aurora Wallace, Chief Marketing Officer of Meridian Global." The applause carried me onto the stage, where 3,000 faces turned toward me with expectation. The lights were bright enough that I couldn't see individual expressions, but I knew Jasper was watching. I could feel his presence like a stone in my shoe, noticeable but no longer painful. 2 years ago, I began, my voice steady and clear, I believed that hard work guaranteed recognition, that excellence would always triumph over politics, that the people closest to us would champion our success rather than steal it. I paused, letting the words settle. I was wrong. And that painful lesson taught me something invaluable. Meritocracy isn't something that happens naturally. It's something we build, protect, and defend every single day. For 45 minutes, I laid out the blueprint for creating corporate cultures where talent thrived and politics died. I shared case studies from Meridian's success, the 3 companies that had followed me and flourished, the employees who'd finally received recognition for their contributions. I never mentioned Jasper or his company by name, but everyone in that room knew the story behind the success. The standing ovation lasted 4 minutes. As I left the stage, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I recognized Jasper's new phone immediately. "Aurora, please. 5 minutes. I need to explain." I deleted it without responding. 3 days later, Marcus Whitman called me into his office. "Aurora, I have an unusual situation. We've been approached about acquiring Cascade Marketing." He paused, watching my face. Jasper's company. The irony was perfect. The company that had denied me a raise, that had given my position to someone unqualified, was now bleeding money and desperate for a buyer. Marcus slid a folder across his desk. "The board wants you to lead the acquisition team. You know their assets better than anyone." The conference room hadn't changed. Same mahogany table, same leather chairs, same floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Portland. But this time I sat at the head of the table, Meridian's legal team flanking me, while Jasper and what remained of his board sat like defendants awaiting sentencing. "The terms are non-negotiable," I began, opening the acquisition folder. "Meridian will absorb your remaining profitable accounts. We'll honor existing client contracts but under new management. As for personnel," I pulled out 2 termination agreements. "These positions are redundant." Hazel Morrison's name topped the first document. According to my sources, she'd been freelancing for small businesses, barely making rent on a studio apartment in Gresham. Her LinkedIn profile showed a string of short-term contracts, none lasting more than 3 months. Jasper's name was on the second. His CEO position would be eliminated immediately, with a modest severance that would barely cover 6 months of expenses. The prenup had protected my assets, but the company's collapse had destroyed his. The house was in foreclosure. His car had been repossessed. The man who'd once laughed at my raise request was now facing financial ruin. I signed both termination papers with the same pen I'd used to pack my desk that Thursday afternoon when everyone thought I was just another discarded employee. The ink flowed smooth and final. "Aurora," Jasper's voice cracked. "Can we discuss? The terms are final. Legal will handle the transition." I stood, gathering my documents. "This meeting is concluded." That evening, my mother Helen arrived from Seattle for my official installation ceremony as CMO. We had dinner at Le Pigeon, Portland's finest restaurant, where she raised her champagne glass with a knowing smile. "I never liked him," she said simply. "Even at your wedding something felt off. The way he always had to be the center of attention, always had to diminish your accomplishments to elevate his own. Why didn't you say anything? Would you have listened? Sometimes we need to learn our own lessons, darling. But I knew you'd figure it out. You've always been stronger than you realized. She reached across the table, squeezing my hand. I suspected the affair, you know. The way that Hazel woman looked at him during your birthday dinner last year. Like a predator marking territory. And you said nothing? I trusted you to handle it your way. And look what you've built from those ashes. You didn't just survive, Aurora. You conquered. The next morning I arrived at my office at 5:30 a.m., my old routine transformed but intact. The sunrise painted Mount Hood in shades of gold and pink, a view Jasper's office had never offered. On my desk lay expansion plans for the 3 companies that had followed me from Cascade Marketing to Meridian. Campbell Industries had tripled their marketing budget. Morrison Hotels had launched a nationwide campaign that was already winning awards. Sterling Communications had gone public with a valuation that made early investors wealthy. I'd built an empire from the ruins of betrayal. Not through destruction or petty vengeance, but through excellence that couldn't be denied or stolen. Every success was earned, documented, and credited properly. Every achievement belonged to those who'd actually achieved it. My phone buzzed with a LinkedIn notification. Jasper had updated his profile, seeking new opportunities in consulting. The same platform where he'd once announced my replacement now broadcast his professional collapse. I closed the notification and opened my presentation for the morning's board meeting. 3 new clients were ready to sign, 2 more companies wanted to discuss partnerships, and Emma would be joining the team as a junior strategist after graduation. The Wallace women were building something that would last longer than any marriage, any betrayal, any attempt to diminish our light. Success, I'd learned, wasn't about the titles others gave you or the raises they denied. It was about knowing your worth and refusing to let anyone convince you otherwise. The board meeting presentation went flawlessly, with 3 new clients signing contracts worth $12 million in combined annual revenue. As I walked back to my office, the morning sun illuminated the Meridian Global lobby's marble floors, and I caught my reflection in the polished elevator doors. The woman staring back wore confidence like a tailored suit, earned through trials that would have broken someone weaker. 1 year. That's all it had taken to transform Meridian's marketing division from a competent department into an industry powerhouse. The numbers spoke louder than any promotion speech I'd ever prepared. Revenue had tripled. Client retention sat at 97%. Employee satisfaction scores in my division topped the company charts. Marcus Whitman called me into his office on a Thursday afternoon, exactly 1 year after that devastating promotion meeting. Aurora, the board met yesterday. Unanimous decision. They want you as our newest director. Youngest woman ever appointed to this position in Meridian's 40-year history. I stood in his corner office looking out at the city below. From here I could see the building where I'd once begged for basic recognition, now dwarfed by Meridian's tower. I accept, I said simply, no elaborate speech needed. My work had already said everything. The following Monday, Emma walked into my office wearing her cap and gown, holding her diploma from the University of Oregon. Summa cum laude in marketing and communications, with a thesis on ethical leadership in modern corporations that her professors called groundbreaking. She'd driven straight from her graduation ceremony to accept her position as junior analyst on my team. Ready to get to work, Ms. Wallace? I asked, using her chosen name with pride. Ready to learn from the best, Ms. Wallace, she replied, setting her diploma on my desk. Where do we start? Morrison Hotels. They're launching a European expansion and I want fresh eyes on the campaign. Your perspective matters here, Emma. Not because you're my daughter, but because you've earned this position through your own merit. We worked side by side that afternoon, her natural talent evident in every suggestion she made. She'd inherited my attention to detail but brought her own creative vision that surprised and delighted our clients. When she presented her initial concepts to the Morrison Hotels team via video conference, they immediately approved her direction. No one mentioned she was my daughter. They saw only a brilliant young strategist who understood their brand. 3 weeks later, at the Western Marketing Alliance conference in Seattle, I was reviewing my keynote notes in the speaker's lounge when I heard a familiar voice at the registration desk. Jasper stood there, fumbling with his credit card trying to pay the late registration fee. His suit was off the rack, his shoes scuffed, his entire demeanor that of someone trying to maintain appearances on a shoestring budget. "I'm sorry, sir, but your card was declined," the registration attendant said quietly. "Try it again. There must be a mistake." I watched him pull out another card, then another. Each rejection made his shoulders drop further. His consulting firm, according to industry gossip, consisted of him and 2 junior contractors working out of a shared workspace in the suburbs. His biggest client was a chain of local mattress stores. I could have walked away, let him struggle with the embarrassment. Instead, I approached the desk. "Put Mr. Wallace's registration on Meridian's corporate account," I told the attendant. Jasper turned, his face cycling through surprise, shame, and something that might have been gratitude. "Aurora, It's Ms. Wallace," I corrected gently but firmly. "Enjoy the conference." I walked away before he could respond. Later, during my keynote on building sustainable success through authentic leadership, I saw him in the back row, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When our eyes met briefly, I felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no residual pain. Just the neutral acknowledgement of shared history that no longer defined me. After my presentation, a young woman approached me, waiting until the crowd of well-wishers dispersed. She looked about 25, sharp-eyed but exhausted, carrying herself with the particular weight of someone enduring professional injustice. "Ms. Wallace? I'm Grace Thompson. I work at Bradley Marketing and I'm experiencing something similar to what you went through. My manager is taking credit for my campaigns while actively sabotaging my advancement. HR won't help because he's the CEO's golf buddy. I don't know what to do." I led her to a quiet corner of the convention center, away from the networking chaos. "Tell me everything." For 30 minutes, Grace outlined systematic theft of her work, gaslighting about her contributions, and a toxic environment that was destroying her confidence. It was my story with different names, different details, but the same fundamental injustice. "Everyone says I should fight it out, prove my worth, show them they're wrong," Grace said, tears threatening to spill. "But I'm exhausted. Can I tell you something I learned the hard way?" I pulled out my business card and a pen. "Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away. Not in defeat but as strategy. The energy you're spending trying to convince people who refuse to see your value, that same energy could build something extraordinary somewhere else." I wrote a note on the back of my card. "This is Marcus Whitman's direct line at Meridian. Tell him I recommended you. We have an opening in our digital division that would be perfect for someone with your skills." "But what about my current job? Won't leaving look like failure?" "Failure is staying where you're not valued. Success is recognizing your worth and finding, or creating, environments that celebrate it." I handed her the card. "And Grace, document everything before you leave. Not for revenge but for protection. Truth has a way of surfacing when the time is right." 2 hours later, I sat in my hotel room video calling Emma, who was working late on the Morrison Hotel's presentation. "Mom, I just got an email from Robert Campbell himself. He said our European campaign concept is exactly what they've been searching for. He wants to increase the budget by 30%. That's your success, Emma. Own it." I learned from the best. Not just about marketing but about standing tall even when people try to make you small. As we talked, I looked out at Seattle's skyline, lights beginning to twinkle in the gathering dusk. Somewhere in this city, Grace Thompson was probably making plans to leave her toxic workplace. Emma was building her career on a foundation of merit and integrity. My mother was telling her book club about her daughter, the CMO and board director. The woman who'd walked out of that conference room with a box of belongings and a heart full of betrayal had transformed into something more powerful than I'd ever imagined. Not through bitterness or revenge, but through the simple act of refusing to accept less than I deserved. I opened my laptop to review the recommendation letter I'd written for Grace, ensuring it captured her potential while carefully avoiding any mention of her current situation. As I signed it with my digital signature, I realized this was my true legacy. Not the titles or the revenue or even the vindication. It was the chain of women I could help climb out of toxic situations, teaching them that sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying those who wronged you. Sometimes it's building something so magnificent that their betrayal becomes nothing more than a footnote in your success story. If this story of corporate revenge had you on the edge of your seat, hit that like button right now. My favorite part was when Aurora handed Jasper the printed article from Catherine Volkov, watching his face pale as he realized his empire was crumbling. What was your favorite moment of justice? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more gripping stories like this. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. I was given 5 minutes to clear my desk before my husband's father, the CEO, dismissed me in front of the entire leadership team. Instead of breaking, I smiled and said, "Thank you." One by one, 22 colleagues quietly stood and followed me out. Nia sneered until the legal director turned pale and whispered, "Get the lawyer, now." 4 minutes and 30 seconds left, Nicholas announced to the room, his Rolex glinting as he tapped its face. I continued packing my desk drawer, pulling out 6 years' worth of work. Project files, team photos, the backup drive containing every system architecture I'd built for Vertex Solutions. The 12 executives watched in silence as I placed each item deliberately into my cardboard box. Nia Blackwood leaned back in her chair, examining her manicured nails with practiced boredom. She thought she'd won. For minutes, Nicholas called out again, his voice sharp with authority. That's when Logan Mitchell stood up from his desk outside the conference room's glass walls, laptop bag already in hand. But I should explain how we got here. How 3 weeks of calculated betrayal led to this moment where my father-in-law counted down my professional execution like a microwave timer. Before we continue, I want to thank you for being here. If you believe that dedication and hard work should be valued over office politics, please consider subscribing. It helps more people discover these important stories. Now let's see what Nicholas had planned. It started at Sunday dinner at the Harrington estate, where we gathered like actors in a play nobody wanted to perform anymore. I'd arrived with Taylor and my homemade apple pie, the one with the lattice crust that took 2 hours to perfect. Eleanor always requested it but never mentioned who made it, as if pies materialized from thin air or perhaps the help. Another record quarter for Vertex Solutions, Nicholas had proclaimed, standing at the head of the mahogany dining table that could seat 20 but usually held just the 4 of us, drowning in its own excess. He raised his crystal tumbler, the whiskey inside catching the light from Eleanor's precious Viennese chandelier. We're dominating the market because I know how to recognize talent and put it where it belongs. His hand landed on Taylor's shoulder with the weight of expectation and inheritance. My husband glowed under the attention, though his contribution to the company consisted mainly of having the right last name and showing up to meetings he didn't understand. Nobody mentioned the Henderson account I'd saved 2 nights before, or the Morrison Industries contract I'd salvaged by working through 3 consecutive weekends, or the fact that while Nicholas was at his monthly country club whiskey tasting, detecting notes of oak and self-importance, I was rebuilding our entire server infrastructure after a critical failure. "You look tired, dear," Eleanor had murmured, her fingers, decorated with enough diamonds to fund my entire department's salary, briefly grazing my shoulder. "Perhaps you should consider better work-life balance. Appearance matters, especially for women in leadership." I'd swallowed my response along with my overcooked salmon. The truth was I looked tired because I'd been awake for 36 hours straight, but admitting that would only prove their unspoken point, that I couldn't handle the pressure, that I was, as Nia would later write, overwhelmed. The morning routine with Taylor had become a study in marital disconnect. Each day started the same. Him fumbling with the expensive espresso machine his parents gifted us, creating coffee that tasted like burnt disappointment while scrolling through sports news on his phone. "Big week ahead?" he'd asked that particular Tuesday, 2 weeks before everything imploded. "I should hear about the promotion today." I watched his reflection tense in the microwave door. "Right. The promotion." He took a sip of his failed latte. "Dad mentioned Nia's been really impressive lately. She's been staying late, taking on extra projects." My fingers stilled on my laptop keyboard. Nia Blackwood, who arrived at 9:30 sharp and left at 5 o'clock on the dot. Nia, whom I'd been training for 3 months at Nicholas's specific request. "She just needs mentoring," he'd said. "Someone to show her how we do things here." So I'd opened my playbook, shared my strategies, explained our client relationships with the patience of a kindergarten teacher. She'd taken notes in her designer portfolio, asking questions that felt increasingly invasive. "How do you handle system failures? What's your backup protocol? Who has administrative access?" I thought she was eager. Turned out she was building a case. The server migration crisis should have been my moment of vindication. 7 days before Nicholas would slam his palm on that conference table, our entire data infrastructure needed emergency migration. 40 terabytes, 8-hour window, zero margin for error. Everything went wrong at once. Corrupted files, failed backups, a power surge that shouldn't have been possible. By 10 p.m. I'd activated my emergency protocol, calling in my entire team. Logan arrived first, still wearing the program from his daughter Emma's dance recital pinned to his shirt. She understood, he'd said quietly, though I caught him checking videos his wife sent from the auditorium. Priya came next, apology heavy in her voice as she called her husband. I know it's our anniversary dinner. I'll make it up to you. She'd ended the call and dove into code like she was defusing a nuclear weapon. Marcus Thompson, Sarah Kim, the Morrison twins who communicated in what seemed like telepathic programming language, they all came without question. The conference room became our bunker, littered with laptops, energy drinks, and eventually Chinese takeout that went cold before we could eat it. We're like some weird, dysfunctional family, Marcus had joked at 2 a.m., attempting to eat lo mein with one hand while typing with the other. Yeah, but at least we chose each other, Sarah had replied, and something about those words felt prophetic now. We'd saved everything. Every file, every client, every contract. Nicholas would never know we'd been 3 keystrokes from losing millions in data and trust. That's what I did. I solved catastrophes so quietly that nobody knew they'd happened. Then came the email. The misdirected message that revealed everything. I'd been reviewing the Henderson account files at 11:47 p.m., preparing my promotion presentation when it appeared. From Nia Blackwood. To me. Except it wasn't meant for me. Nicholas, as discussed, I've successfully salvaged the Henderson situation. The client was thoroughly impressed with my crisis management. I believe it's time to discuss restructuring. She seems overwhelmed, arrives looking exhausted most mornings. Perhaps fresh leadership would benefit the department. My laptop screen blurred as I read it twice, then 3 times. The Henderson situation. The one I'd personally managed while Nia was posting Instagram stories from a wine tasting. The rescue I'd orchestrated while she slept. I forwarded it to my personal email without thinking, some primitive instinct for self-preservation kicking in. Then I sat in my home office, still wearing the coffee-stained blouse I'd put on 18 hours earlier, understanding finally that dedication looked like weakness to those who'd never truly worked. 3 minutes, Nicholas announced now, his voice cutting through my memory. The executives remained frozen, but through the glass I saw Priya standing up, then Marcus, then Sarah. One by one my team, my chosen family, began to rise. 2 minutes, Nicholas called out, but his voice seemed to come from underwater. Through the conference room's glass walls, I could see the entire 15th floor frozen in a tableau of disbelief. Sarah Kim had her phone halfway to her ear. The Morrison twins stood at their adjoining desks, identical expressions of shock on their faces. I reached for the framed photo from our last team celebration, the one where we'd worked 72 hours straight to launch the Patterson project. My fingers brushed against something else. A USB drive, taped underneath my desk drawer. The one where I'd backed up every email, every document, every piece of evidence that might matter someday. Apparently someday was today. The morning had started wrong from the moment I'd badged into the building at 6:45 a.m. The security guard, usually chatty, had avoided my eyes. The elevator seemed too quiet. The 15th floor felt like it was holding its breath. When I'd reached the conference room to set up my presentation, the one about our department's 340% efficiency increase, Nia was already there. In my seat. The one I'd claimed 3 years ago because it faced away from the glaring morning sun. Her laptop was open to spreadsheets I recognized immediately. My department's confidential budget projections, the ones on a secured server she shouldn't have been able to access. Oh, good morning, she'd said, that saccharine sweetness coating her words like artificial sweetener. Nicholas asked me to review these before the meeting. You don't mind, do you? The question wasn't really a question. We both knew it. I'd stood there, laptop bag heavy on my shoulder, watching her scroll through salary allocations, project budgets, vendor contracts. 6 years of carefully built financial architecture. How did you get access to those files? She'd looked up then, and for just a second the mask slipped. Pure satisfaction flickered across her features before the innocent expression returned. Nicholas gave me temporary admin privileges. to help with the transition. Transition. The word hung there between us like a diagnosis. The room had filled gradually but wrong. David Park from finance arrived first, clutching his tablet like a shield, not meeting my eyes when I said good morning. Then came Margaret Lawson, our legal director, who normally radiated composure but today kept checking her phone, gripping her legal pad with white knuckles. Even the coffee was wrong. Usually, someone would have started the expensive machine by now, the one that ground beans fresh for each cup. Today there was only silence and the smell of fierce sweat barely masked by expensive cologne. I'd started my presentation anyway. Clicked through slides showing our achievements, our metrics, our wins. My voice stayed steady even as I felt the room's energy shifting, darkening, preparing for something I couldn't quite name. As you can see, we've exceeded every target by. The door hadn't just opened. It had exploded inward, the handle cracking against the wall hard enough to leave a mark. Nicholas stood there, his face that particular shade of red that appeared when his blood pressure medication wasn't quite enough. His Italian suit, usually perfect, looked disheveled. His tie was crooked. He crossed the room in 3 strides, his palm hitting the table with enough force to make everyone's coffee jump. Margaret's actually spilled, brown liquid pooling across her legal pad, but she didn't move to clean it. You have 5 minutes to clear your desk. The words didn't make sense at first. They existed in the air but my brain refused to process them. I stood there, presentation clicker still in my hand, slide 17 still glowing on the screen behind me. A graph showing the money I'd saved this company. That's when I understood the choreography of this morning. Why Nia had my files. Why executives avoided eye contact. Why Margaret looked ready to cry or run or both. This wasn't spontaneous. This was planned. Orchestrated. I had been marked for execution and everyone except me had known it was coming. Nia leaned back in my chair, and I saw it then. The slight upturn of her lips, the relaxation in her shoulders, the way she examined her manicure with the satisfaction of someone admiring their own handiwork. She'd won something and we both knew it. But here's what 20 years in tech had taught me. The moment when you think you've won is usually when you're most vulnerable. David Park's fingers were moving across his calculator with the frantic energy of someone watching money evaporate. I knew that motion. I'd seen it during budget crises, contract negotiations, anytime numbers were about to become very, very bad. Margaret had her phone out now, typing with shaking fingers, her face the gray-white of old paper. They understood something Nicholas and Nia didn't. Something about contracts and clauses and the very expensive difference between firing someone privately versus publicly humiliating them in front of witnesses. I set down the presentation clicker with deliberate calm. My grandmother's voice echoed in my head. She'd survived the depression, raised 6 kids alone after my grandfather died, never let anyone see her buckle. When they expect you to break, she told me once, peeling potatoes with hands that never trembled, that's when you stand straightest. Thank you. The words came out clear, genuine even. Because in that moment I felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. 6 years of pretending Taylor's family accepted me. 6 years of Eleanor's backhanded compliments about my appearance while I saved her husband's company. 6 years of being good enough to fix every crisis but never good enough to truly belong. Nicholas's jaw went slack. He'd expected tears, pleading, anger, anything but gratitude. Behind him I saw several executives exchange glances. Someone's pen rolled off the table and hit the floor with a sound like a gunshot in the silence. I began packing with the methodical precision I used for system architectures. Each item lifted, examined, placed in the cardboard box that had materialized from somewhere. The backup drive went in first. Then the project files. The team photo. My coffee mug with the chip on the handle. 1 minute. Nicholas announced, but his voice had lost its edge. Confusion was creeping in, the first crack in his certainty. Through the glass, motion caught my eye. Logan Mitchell was standing at his desk, laptop bag already over his shoulder. He wasn't packing. He was already packed. Ready. Then Priya stood. Then Marcus. One by one, like a slow wave building strength, my entire team rose from their desks. Nicholas turned to see what I was looking at, and his face went from red to white so fast I thought he might faint. Nia's expression shifted from triumph to confusion to something approaching panic. "Time's up," Nicholas said, but it came out as a question. I picked up my box, its weight familiar and strange at once. 6 years reduced to what I could carry in my arms. As I walked toward the door, two security guards appeared. Standard protocol for terminations, they mumbled apologetically. Tom and Derek. I'd brought them coffee during late-night lockdowns, knew their kids' names. I'm sorry about this, Tom whispered. Don't be, I told him. You're just doing your job. We walked through the cubicle farm toward the elevator, and that's when the symphony began. The squeak of chairs pushing back from desks. The rustle of bags being gathered. The soft thuds of laptops closing. Logan fell into step beside me. Then Priya, her heels clicking a determined rhythm. Marcus, Sarah, the Morrison twins moving in perfect synchronization. By the time we reached the elevator, 22 people had joined our procession. Tom stopped walking. His hand dropped from my elbow. In 15 years, he said, voice thick with something between awe and respect, I've never seen anything like this. Neither had Nicholas Harrington, whose empire had just started its collapse, though he wouldn't understand that for another 48 hours. The elevator doors closed on 22 people and one security guard who looked like he'd just witnessed a miracle or a massacre. He wasn't sure which. Tom pressed the lobby button with a hand that shook slightly. Nobody spoke during the descent. The only sound was the mechanical hum and someone's phone buzzing insistently. Then Logan's. Then Priya's. Like popcorn starting to pop, our phones erupted in a cascade of notifications. When the doors opened to the lobby, we walked out into blazing midday sun. The kind of light that makes everything look overexposed and surreal. Maria at reception stood up so fast her chair rolled backward into the wall. Gerald, the maintenance supervisor, stopped mopping and watched us file past. Someone started a slow clap from the loading dock. I couldn't see who, and then others joined in until the sound echoed off the parking garage walls. This is insane, Priya whispered beside me. This is justice, Logan corrected, shifting his laptop bag. We stood there in the parking lot, 23 people blinking in the harsh light, phones buzzing like angry wasps. The Morrison twins were already on their laptops, sitting on the concrete median, typing furiously. Sarah had her phone pressed to her ear, explaining to someone, probably her partner, why she was suddenly unemployed at 11:47 on a Tuesday morning. I should go, I said to no one in particular. My car keys felt foreign in my hand. We all should, Marcus replied, but nobody moved. We stood there like survivors of a shipwreck, not quite ready to leave the sight of the vessel going down. The drive home took 17 minutes. I know because I watched the clock the entire way, unable to focus on anything else. My phone, tossed in the passenger seat, continued its electronic seizure. 3 times I reached for it at red lights. 3 times I pulled my hand back. Taylor's car was in the driveway. Of course. He worked from home Tuesdays and Thursdays, a luxury Nicholas had granted his son but would never have considered for anyone else, especially not me despite my longer tenure and higher position. I sat in my car for a full minute, engine off, listening to the tick of cooling metal. The house we'd bought 3 years ago, with help from his parents for the down payment, naturally, looked the same as when I'd left this morning. Same cherry tree in the front yard. Same crack in the driveway we kept meaning to fix. Same life except everything had changed. Taylor met me at the door, his laptop still in one hand, confusion written across his face. Behind him I could see his home office setup. Dual monitors glowing with spreadsheets he probably didn't understand. Why are you home? Are you sick? Then he noticed the box in my arms. His face went through a series of expressions like someone cycling through TV channels. Confusion, concern, realization, anger. Dad called. His voice was flat. He says you lost it in the meeting. Says you were unstable, started crying, had to be escorted out by security. I set the box on our entryway table, the one his mother had given us that I'd always thought was too ornate for the space. Is that what he said? He said you've been struggling lately. That Nia had to cover for your mistakes. That he had no choice. I pulled out my phone, ignored the 100 other notifications and found the forwarded email. Nia's email. The one claiming credit for the Henderson account. The one calling me overwhelmed. The one that was clearly part of a longer conversation with Nicholas the first hadn't been privy to. Taylor read it once. Then again. His jaw muscle twitched. The tell he'd inherited from his father that appeared when reality didn't match the narrative he'd been fed. This is. He started then stopped. When did she send this? 3 weeks ago. Accidentally sent to me instead of your father. And you didn't tell me? Would you have believed me? Or would you have said Nia made an honest mistake, that your father would never plot against his own daughter-in-law? The silence stretched between us like a contested border. Taylor set down his laptop, ran both hands through his hair, another inherited gesture. I need to think, he said, grabbing his keys from the hook by the door. I just need to think. Taylor. But he was already gone, the door closing with a decisive click that sounded like punctuation. I stood in our entryway, still in my work clothes, surrounded by the life we'd built on a foundation that was apparently sand. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something, instinct, exhaustion, morbid curiosity, made me swipe accept. Please don't hang up. Margaret Lawson's voice, barely above a whisper. I'm calling from the bathroom. The executive bathroom on 16, the one nobody uses. Margaret. Your contract. The clause about hostile termination. Nicholas never read it. Legal reviewed it 6 years ago when you were hired, but he just signed where I told him to sign. Her words tumbled out like water breaking through a dam. The humiliation multiplier alone puts your severance at $800,000. But with documented harassment, the public nature of it, 22 witnesses, we're looking at millions. Millions. Why are you telling me this? Pause. The sound of running water. Because in about an hour, Nicholas is going to realize what he's done. And when he does, he's going to blame me. Say I should have warned him. I've worked here 12 years. I've covered for his temper, his affairs, his questionable decisions. But this is going to end my career. Margaret. Can we meet? Tomorrow. Somewhere nobody from Vertex would go. I have documentation. Things you should know. Things that might help us both. The call ended before I could respond. I stood there, phone in hand, when it immediately buzzed again. Dylan from my former team, had sent a screenshot. A Slack channel called The Exodus, with 247 members before IT shut it down. The messages were a flood of disbelief, support, and panic. Did this really happen? 22 people walked out? What do we do now? Is the Henderson project dead? Who's going to maintain the servers? My LinkedIn app showed 47 notifications. Emails poured in. 3 competitors had already reached out with variations of heard the news and let's talk. But one email made me stop breathing. Catherine Walsh, the venture capitalist who'd turned down Nicholas's pitch 6 months ago, telling him his company lacked innovative leadership. Her message was 2 sentences. Your team's loyalty is worth more than Vertex's entire market cap. Let's build something. I was reading it for the 3rd time when the doorbell rang. Eleanor Harrington stood on my porch at 9 p.m., makeup smudged, holding a manila folder like it might bite her. May I come in? Eleanor asked, and for the first time in 6 years she looked fragile. Not the polished society matron who commanded charity boards and country club committees, but a woman carrying weight she could no longer bear alone. I stepped aside. She entered my home, the home she'd helped fund but never truly welcomed me into, and stood awkwardly in the entryway, clutching that manila folder like a confession. Taylor's not here, I said. I know. I waited until I saw him leave. She followed me to the living room, sitting on the edge of our couch as if she might need to flee at any moment. Nicholas fired his own brother this way 20 years ago. Edward. He was CFO, had been with the company since the beginning. She opened the folder, revealing yellowed board meeting minutes, old emails printed on paper that had softened with age. Edward questioned one of Nicholas's decisions publicly. Not even criticized, just questioned. Nicholas gave him 10 minutes to clear out. The family never recovered. Edward's wife left him. His kids won't speak to Nicholas. 20 years and the wound still bleeds at every holiday. Why are you telling me this now? Eleanor's laugh was bitter, nothing like her usual musical society trill. Because I've watched my husband destroy people for decades, telling myself it was business, that successful men had to be ruthless. But watching him do it to you, someone who saved his company while he was playing golf, someone who made my son happy even if we never showed it, I can't pretend anymore. She pulled out another paper. This is from 5 years ago. Michelle Reeves, VP of Marketing. Fired in a board meeting for insubordination. She'd suggested Nicholas's strategy was outdated. Another paper. 3 years ago, James Chin, head of innovation. Terminated publicly because he'd received a job offer from a competitor and Nicholas wanted to make an example. They choose the easy path, Eleanor continued, and now she was looking directly at me. Nicholas and Taylor both. They avoid conflict by creating bigger conflicts. They'd rather destroy relationships than admit fault. I've enabled it for 35 years and I'm sorry. Her hug was unexpected, fierce and brief. She left the folder on my coffee table and disappeared into the night, leaving me with evidence of a pattern I'd been too close to see. My phone rang at 2:07 a.m. I'd finally fallen asleep on the couch, still in my work clothes, the folder's contents spread across the coffee table like a crime scene. Please tell me you're awake. Margaret Lawson's voice was pitched high with hysteria. I am now. Nia destroyed everything. She tried to prove she could handle your systems, wanted to show Nicholas she didn't need the transition period. She was trying to access backup files but deleted the main customer database instead. I sat up, suddenly completely awake. She deleted the entire customer database? That's not the worst part. She tried to recover it herself. Didn't call IT, didn't follow protocol. She ran some recovery software she found online. It corrupted everything. The entire East Coast operation has been dark for 6 hours. They're estimating 14 hours minimum before even partial restoration. The silence stretched while I processed this. Our customer database wasn't just names and addresses. It was 17 years of relationship management, purchase histories, custom configurations, support tickets, the DNA of the company's client relationships. How much? I asked. Conservative estimate? 50 million in immediate losses. That's not counting the clients we'll lose, the lawsuits, the reputation damage. Margaret's voice cracked. She's been in the bathroom crying for 2 hours. Nicholas has been screaming at everyone. He threw a laptop. Actually threw it at the wall. Security is on standby. I felt something I hadn't expected. Nothing. Not satisfaction, not vindication, just a cold, empty nothing. Nia had engineered my humiliation, and now she was drowning in her own incompetence. Margaret, you need to document everything. Every email, every action, every word Nicholas says. Already am. I'm creating my own insurance policy. She paused. Your team could have prevented this. My team wouldn't have caused it in the first place. After Margaret hung up, I sat in the dark, watching the sunrise creep across my living room walls. Somewhere across town, Vertex Solutions was hemorrhaging money and reputation while Nia learned that taking credit and taking responsibility were vastly different things. Taylor came home at 7 a.m. looking like he'd slept in his car. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair stood at odd angles, and he reeked of whiskey and regret. The database is gone, he said without preamble. I heard. Dad's lost his mind. He's threatening to sue Nia, but legal says he can't because he gave her the access. He's calling emergency board meetings. Mom's had 2 panic attacks. He collapsed on the couch beside me, careful not to touch me. He wants me to convince you to sign an NDA and make this go away quietly. Make what go away? His public humiliation of me? The 22 people who walked out? Or the fact that his chosen replacement just cost the company $50 million? Taylor rubbed his face with both hands. All of it. He's offering the $800,000 Margaret mentioned. Full severance, extended benefits, glowing recommendation. All you have to do is sign saying you won't discuss what happened or compete for 2 years. No. The board is threatening his position. If you sue, if this gets worse, he could lose everything. I turned to look at my husband, really look at him. He was a stranger wearing Taylor's face, speaking Taylor's voice, but the man I'd married, who'd promised to stand by me, to be my partner, was gone if he'd ever existed at all. He should have thought of that before he gave me 5 minutes to clear my desk. I need you to fix this. Those 5 words hung between us like a blade. Not, I'm sorry. Not, he was wrong. Not, I should have defended you. Just another demand to sacrifice my dignity for the Harrington family comfort. I need you to leave, I said, surprised by how steady my voice was. Taylor looked at me then, and for a moment I saw something, awareness maybe, that he'd chosen the wrong side. But Harringtons didn't admit mistakes. They just found someone else to blame. He left without another word, and I knew our marriage had ended in that moment, even if the paperwork would come later. By noon, my living room had transformed into a startup incubator. 22 people with laptops balanced on their knees, sitting on floors, perched on chair arms, crowded around my dining table. Logan's 12-year-old daughter Emma sat in the corner doing homework, occasionally looking up at the chaos with curious eyes. Phoenix Digital, Priya announced, holding up a napkin where she'd sketched a logo, a stylized bird rising from flames. We're not subtle, but neither were they. Marcus was on his laptop, fingers flying. Domain secured. Social media handles locked down. I'm also grabbing variations before Vertex thinks to cybersquat. His husband, James, appeared with a tray of coffee mugs. I made a supply run. Nobody's building a company on empty stomachs. Pizza boxes accumulated like sedimentary layers of ambition. The Morrison twins had somehow created a project management system on my living room wall using sticky notes. Sarah was already reaching out to contacts, her phone voice professional despite sitting cross-legged on my floor. We need incorporation documents, someone said. On it, replied Logan, whose brother-in-law was apparently a corporate attorney. The energy was electric, desperate, hopeful. We weren't just colleagues anymore. We were refugees from a corporate disaster, building something new from the ashes of what Nicholas had destroyed. And in that crowded, chaotic living room, I felt more at home than I had in 6 years at Vertex. My phone buzzed at 4:47 p.m., 3 days after we'd transformed my living room into Phoenix Digital's first headquarters. Robert Hoffman's number appeared on the screen, Nicholas's lawyer calling for the third time today. Ms. West, Mr. Harrington has authorized me to increase the offer to $800,000. His voice carried the exhaustion of a man losing a war he'd thought would be easy. This is the baseline severance per your contract. The baseline assumes normal termination procedures, I replied, watching the Morrison twins carry computer equipment into what would become our actual office, a warehouse we'd found yesterday. Being given 5 minutes to clear my desk in front of 12 witnesses isn't normal. Margaret Lawson can verify that. The silence stretched. Ms. Lawson is no longer authorized to speak on behalf of Vertex Solutions. Of course she wasn't. Nicholas's first instinct was always to shoot the messenger, even when the message was a legal disaster of his own making. Then I suppose we'll let the courts decide what's appropriate. My lawyer will be in touch. I ended the call just as a white Tesla pulled into the warehouse parking lot. Catherine Walsh stepped out, her designer heels clicking against cracked asphalt, surveying our new space with the calculating eye of someone who'd turned dozens startups into billion-dollar companies. The warehouse was nothing special. 20,000 square feet of concrete impossibility, still smelling of industrial cleaner and the ghost of whatever had been manufactured here before. Fluorescent lights flickered intermittently. The loading dock door didn't close properly. There was a suspicious stain on the floor that looked like it had its own ecosystem. This is perfect, Catherine announced, and she wasn't being sarcastic. It's a disaster, Priya countered, gesturing at a ceiling tile that chose that moment to release a small shower of dust. No, it's hungry space. It wants to become something. Catherine walked the perimeter, her footsteps echoing. You know what Amazon's first office was? A garage. Google. A garage. Apple. Also a garage. You've upgraded, you've got walls and everything. She pulled out her phone, made a quick call. Send the contract to my email. Yes, the full amount. She looked at me. 3.5 million seed funding. I want 20% equity and a board seat. Logan nearly dropped his laptop. You haven't even seen our business plan. I've seen 22 people follow their leader out of a stable job into uncertainty. That's worth more than any PowerPoint. He paused at the door. Nicholas Harrington once told me emotional decisions have no place in business. He said it while rejecting my proposal to invest in Vertex because he didn't like my aggressive negotiating style. Funny how his emotional decision to publicly humiliate you just handed me the next unicorn. The next morning she returned with 2 other VCs. They toured our disaster of a warehouse, asked pointed questions about scalability and market penetration, then committed another $2 million on the spot. We hadn't even incorporated yet, and we were valued at $17.5 million. My phone hadn't stopped ringing. But the call that mattered came from Richard Henderson himself, CEO of Henderson Corp. I heard about the situation at Vertex, he said without preamble. I also heard about the database disaster. Nia Blackwood tried to explain to me yesterday why our configurations were lost. She cried. Actually cried on a client call. Mr. Henderson. We've worked with your team for 3 years. You personally saved our product launch. Logan rebuilt our entire architecture over a weekend. Priya identified data patterns that increased our efficiency by 200%. He paused. The contracts follow the talent, not the building. We're moving our business to Phoenix Digital, effective immediately. By end of day, 3 more clients had called. Patterson Industries, Morrison Group, Chin Technologies. Together they represented $30 million in annual contracts. Each one announced their decision on LinkedIn, professional corporate speak that barely disguised their distaste for how Vertex had treated us. Stocks down another 5%, Sarah announced, refreshing her screen. That's 15% total since Tuesday. We were unpacking equipment, setting up desks. Actual desks now, bought secondhand from a startup that had failed, when Taylor appeared in the doorway. He looked smaller somehow, diminished, holding a bouquet of roses. Red roses. After 6 years of marriage, he still didn't know I was allergic to roses, that I preferred wildflowers, that I'd told him this on our 3rd date. Can we talk? He shifted his weight, uncomfortable in his pressed khakis and polo shirt. His father's uniform, adopted without question. I stepped outside with him, leaving my team to continue building our future. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the parking lot's cracked asphalt. Dad's willing to apologize, he said, thrusting the roses at me like a peace offering or maybe a shield. He'll give you an executive position. Corner office. 20% raise. Full restoration of benefits. I didn't take the flowers. He thinks this is about office space? It's a good offer. More than fair considering. Considering what? That he humiliated me? That Nia destroyed the database trying to prove she could do my job? That 22 people walked out because they witnessed something unconscionable. Taylor set the roses on the ground between us and they looked sad there, dying on hot asphalt. He's my father. And I was your wife. Past tense, Taylor. You made that past tense the moment you asked me to swallow humiliation for your family's comfort. His face crumpled slightly, the first genuine emotion I'd seen from him in days. You're giving up on us? On our marriage? Your father didn't break us. You did. When you came home and asked me to fix his mistake instead of standing by me. When you chose the easy path of family loyalty over the hard path of doing what's right. He looked at me then, really looked, and for a moment I saw the man I'd fallen in love with. The one who'd existed before his father's influence calcified around him like armor. But that man had been buried so long resurrection wasn't possible anymore. I should go, he said quietly. Yes. He walked back to his car, the BMW his father had bought him, naturally, and drove away. The roses remained on the asphalt. I left them there. By evening they'd wilted in the heat, petals scattering in the wind like all of Nicholas's carefully laid plans. At midnight my phone buzzed with an encrypted file from Margaret Lawson. The subject line read simply, "My severance package." The audio file was 43 minutes of a Vertex board meeting. The quality was crystal clear. Margaret had probably recorded it on her phone, placed strategically near the center of the table. $50 million. A voice I recognized as board member Jonathan Cross. He cost us $50 million because he couldn't control his temper? The database is completely corrupted. Another voice, probably CFO David Sterling. Nia Blackwood had no authorization to access those systems. Nicholas gave her full administrative access. This was definitely Margaret, her voice carefully neutral. Against my legal advisement. You promoted your girlfriend's roommate? This voice dripped with disgust. Christina's roommate from college? That's who you thought could replace your daughter-in-law who built half our infrastructure. Nicholas's voice, when it came, sounded hollow. Nia showed promise. She was eager, ambitious. She was unqualified. The slam of a hand on the table. This isn't some family drama, Harrington. You turned a personal vendetta into a $50 million disaster. Maybe more if the clients keep leaving. I listened to the board meeting recording one more time, their voices filling my warehouse office at 1 a.m. This isn't leadership, it's a temper tantrum that cost us $50 million. The disgust in their voices was palpable, even through Margaret's phone speaker. The next morning, Everything accelerated. "We're doing a press conference," Catherine Walsh announced, striding into our warehouse at 7 a.m. with a media consultant and enough coffee for everyone. "Tomorrow, 2 p.m. Every tech outlet is begging for a statement. We give them one." "I don't want to seem vindictive," I said. "You won't. You'll seem like exactly what you are, a leader who refused to accept humiliation as the price of employment." She pulled out her tablet. Meanwhile, Nicholas is holding his own conference at Vertex headquarters at the exact same time. My sources say he's planning to frame this as a strategic restructuring. The thought of Nicholas spinning this disaster into corporate doublespeak should have angered me. Yet I felt oddly calm. Let him try to polish this catastrophe. The truth had a way of showing through no matter how much corporate varnish you applied. We spent the next 24 hours preparing. Logan and Priya helped write my statement. Sarah coordinated logistics. The Morrison twins somehow got us a professional backdrop and lighting that made our warehouse look like a legitimate tech startup instead of abandoned industrial space. At 1:45 p.m. the next day, I stood in front of the cameras, wearing the same navy blazer I'd worn that Tuesday, deliberately. My team flanked me, all 22 of them, dressed professionally but not uniformly. We looked like what we were. Individuals who'd chosen to stand together. "Good afternoon," I began, my voice steadier than my pulse. 2 weeks ago, Nicholas Harrington gave me 5 minutes to clear my desk after 6 years of building Vertex Solutions' technical infrastructure. Those 5 minutes taught me something valuable. That competence threatens the incompetent, that loyalty means nothing to those who never earned it, and that sometimes the best thing that can happen is being forced to leave a place that never valued you. The cameras clicked like digital rain. Someone from TechCrunch was typing furiously. The Bloomberg reporter was live streaming. Phoenix Digital isn't just a company. It's proof that culture beats strategy, that teams built on respect outperform hierarchies built on fear. We've secured $5.5 million in funding. We've retained clients worth $30 million annually. We've done in 2 weeks what Vertex Solutions claimed would take years, because we have something they lost: trust. Meanwhile, across town, my phone was lighting up with texts from people watching Nicholas's simultaneous conference. Margaret sent a play-by-play. He's sweating through his makeup. Nia's behind him looking at her phone, literally job hunting during the press conference. He just said, "strategic restructuring for enhanced agility," and a reporter laughed out loud. Someone shared a screenshot from the financial networks. They were showing both conferences on split screen. Me calm and surrounded by my team. Nicholas, red-faced and stammering, with Nia beside him scrolling through LinkedIn, apparently having given up any pretense of paying attention. The stock ticker ran beneath both feeds. Vertex Solutions, down another 8%. We were still celebrating that evening when my phone rang from a blocked number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me swipe accept. "Please don't hang up." Nia's voice, but different. Gone was the sugar-sweet coating, the practiced professionalism. She sounded young, desperate, frightened. "I know you hate me." "I don't hate you," I said, surprising myself with the truth of it. "I nothing you." A sharp intake of breath. Then, "I've been terminated." Strategic differences, they called it, but everyone knows it means I destroyed the database. I'm being blacklisted. Nobody will even interview me. She was crying now, ugly sobs that reminded me she was only 26, ambitious and ruthless but still young enough to believe those were the only qualities that mattered. "I have student loans, rent, my mom's medical bills. She has MS and I'm her only support and her voice cracked completely. "I know I took credit for your work. I know what I did. But please, just one recommendation. Just something that says I'm not completely incompetent." I looked around our warehouse at my team still working despite the late hour, at the whiteboards covered with actual innovation instead of corporate buzzwords, at the space we'd built on merit instead of manipulation. "Nia," I said, and she fell silent except for sniffles. "You took credit for the Henderson account. You called me overwhelmed and suggested I needed to be replaced. You smiled while Nicholas gave me 5 minutes to pack 6 years of work. I know You took credit for others' work. Now you need to take credit for your own failure. That's the only recommendation I can give you." The call lasted exactly 5 minutes. I timed it. 3 days later, the news broke everywhere at once. Nicholas Harrington steps down as CEO of Vertex Solutions. The press release was a masterpiece of corporate euphemism. Pursuing new opportunities. Time for fresh leadership. Grateful for his years of service. But everyone knew the truth. The board had given him a choice. Resign with a fraction of his dignity intact or be fired for cause and lose everything. He'd chosen resignation, but it was like choosing which cliff to jump from. The ending was the same. Eleanor called me that evening, her voice hollow but somehow lighter. He's moving to the guest house. 35 years of marriage, and this is what finally broke us. Not his affairs with secretaries. Not his ego that needed its own zip code. But watching him destroy you, someone who'd done nothing but make him successful, purely for sport. That's when I knew the man I married was gone, if he ever existed. Eleanor. Don't apologize. Don't comfort me. This is freedom, even if it comes 30 years too late. The warehouse felt different that night. The Morrison twins had strung up lights that made the concrete walls look almost warm. Sarah had brought in plants that somehow thrived despite the industrial setting. Marcus had set up a sound system that played quiet jazz while we worked. We did it, Priya said, appearing beside me with 2 glasses of champagne, not the cheap stuff anymore. Catherine had sent cases of the real thing. Did what? We won. David beat Goliath. The Empire struck back, but the rebels won anyway. Choose your metaphor. Gerald, the maintenance supervisor from Vertex who joined us the week before, raised his mop in the air like a torch. The same gesture from that Tuesday, but different now. Then it had been solidarity. Now it was victory. To second chances and first-class revenge, he called out, and everyone raised their glasses. But I wasn't thinking about revenge anymore. I was thinking about the contract we'd just landed, the one Vertex had been courting for 2 years. Global Tech, whose CEO had called personally to say, "We saw the press conferences. We saw how Vertex treats the people who built their success. We choose to work with builders, not destroyers." Our valuation had hit $50 million. Not bad for a company that started in my living room with pizza boxes and panic. It's not revenge, I told Priya, watching my team, my family of choice, working late because they wanted to, not because someone was counting their hours. It's just success. The revenge is just a side effect. But somewhere across town, Nicholas Harrington sat alone in a guest house behind the mansion he could no longer afford, his empire reduced to rubble in less than a month, learning too late that when you give someone 5 minutes to pack their life, sometimes they take everything with them when they go. The champagne had gone flat by morning, but nobody cared. We were still riding the high of our $50 million valuation when Margaret Lawson walked through our warehouse door at 7:23 a.m., carrying a banker's box and wearing an expression I'd never seen on her face before, determination mixed with something darker. "I need 5 minutes of your time," she said, and the irony of that specific number wasn't lost on anyone. She set the box on my desk. A real desk now, bought from a liquidation sale, scarred but solid. "I've been Vertex's legal director for 12 years. I've watched Nicholas destroy careers, break employment laws, cover up harassment claims. I documented everything." She opened the box, revealing folders meticulously labeled by date and violation type. Every illegal termination. Every settlement we paid to keep people quiet. Every time he screamed at someone until they cried, then had me write up paperwork saying they resigned for personal reasons. Logan looked up from his laptop. "Why keep all this?" "Insurance," Margaret said simply. I knew eventually he'd turn on me too. I was right. He's been telling the board I should have prevented your mass exodus, that I failed in my fiduciary duty. He pulled out a thick folder. "This one's my favorite. 3 years of emails where he explicitly told me to ignore legal protocols." She turned to me then, her gray eyes sharp behind designer glasses. "I want to be your chief legal officer. In exchange, I'll ensure Nicholas never works in tech again. My revenge might be colder than yours, but it's been fermenting for 12 years. I know where every body is buried because I helped dig the graves." Priya whistled low. "That's dark." "That's business," Margaret corrected. "He taught me that. Now I'm going to teach him what happens when you create enemies who know your secrets." I looked at this woman who'd sat in that boardroom, watching my humiliation, and realized she hadn't been complicit. She'd been collecting evidence. "Welcome to Phoenix Digital," I said. Margaret's first official act was scheduling the settlement negotiation. "Neutral territory," she insisted. "The Marriott downtown. Conference room 12. It costs $800 an hour, which Nicholas will be paying for. The meeting was set for Thursday at 10 a.m. I arrived early, finding the room exactly as expensive and soulless as expected. Leather chairs that tried too hard, a table polished to mirror brightness, windows overlooking a city Nicholas once thought he owned. He arrived 15 minutes late, a power play that might have worked when he had power to play with. But the man who walked in wasn't the Nicholas Harrington who'd slammed his palm on a boardroom table. This version looked deflated, his Armani suit hanging loose on a frame that had lost weight from stress. His lawyer, Robert Hoffman, looked equally exhausted. "Let's make this quick," Robert said, pulling out documents. "Mr. Harrington is prepared to offer $1.2 million, full benefits continuation for 24 months, and immediate vesting of all stock options." Margaret leaned forward. "Plus a written statement acknowledging that the termination was handled inappropriately, and a non-disparagement clause that goes both ways." Nicholas's jaw clenched, that familiar tell, but he nodded. The man who never apologized, never admitted fault, was about to sign a document acknowledging his failure. The room was silent except for the scratch of pens on paper. Nicholas signed with a hand that trembled slightly, his signature smaller than the bold scrawl I remembered. When he passed the document to me, our eyes met. No words were exchanged, but entire conversations happened in that silence. His eyes said, "You destroyed me." Mine replied, "You destroyed yourself." His said, "I gave you everything." Mine answered, "You gave me 5 minutes." As I endorsed the check, $1.2 million, more money than my parents had seen in their lifetime, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not satisfaction or vindication. Just emptiness. The hollow feeling of winning a war that should never have been fought. Nicholas stood to leave, then paused at the door. For a moment I thought he might speak, might finally say something real. But Harrington men didn't apologize. They just retreated to lick their wounds in private. After he left, Margaret pulled out her phone and showed me something that made my breath catch. Security footage from Vertex, dated the day before Nicholas's resignation. "Tom from security sent this to me," she said. "He thought you should see it." The grainy footage showed Nicholas standing in what had been my office, now completely empty. The timestamp read 9:47 p.m. He was alone, speaking to the empty room, though the security camera didn't capture audio. "He stood there for 20 minutes, Margaret said. Tom could read his lips for part of it. He kept saying, 'I gave her 5 minutes. She took everything.'" "He's wrong," I said quietly. "He took everything from himself. I just refused to go down with his ship." Margaret nodded. "Tom wanted you to know something else. He's the one who made sure the cameras captured everything that Tuesday. Every angle of the boardroom, the walkout, all of it. He said watching you maintain dignity while Nicholas lost his mind was the best thing he'd witnessed in 15 years of security work." My phone buzzed with a text from Eleanor. "Can you meet? Important." I found her at a coffee shop downtown, the kind of place that served $12 lattes to people who thought price equaled quality. She looked different. Younger somehow, though she'd aged years in the past month. "I filed for divorce this morning," she said without preamble. "Served him papers at the country club. During the monthly board meeting. Maximum witnesses, maximum humiliation. Eleanor. Don't pity me. This is 35 years overdue." She stirred her overpriced coffee with deliberate calm. I excused his cruelty as strength. His affairs as stress relief. His destruction of people's careers as business necessities. But watching him destroy you, someone who'd done nothing but succeed, purely because he could, that was when I understood I'd been enabling a monster. She pulled out her phone, showing me a photo of legal documents. "I'm taking half of everything. The houses, the investments, his precious wine collection that he spent more time with than his family. My lawyer says the prenup won't hold, too many documented infidelities." "What about Taylor?" Eleanor's face darkened. "Taylor chose his side. He could have stood by you. Instead he asked you to absorb humiliation to keep his father comfortable. He's exactly what I raised him to be, a coward who mistakes compliance for loyalty." She stood to leave, then paused. "The Harrington dynasty took 3 generations to build. Nicholas destroyed it in 5 minutes. The very 5 minutes he gave you. There's poetry in that, don't you think?" As she walked away, I realized the Harrington empire hadn't just crumbled, It had imploded entirely. Nicholas lost his company, his reputation, his marriage, his legacy. All because he couldn't resist humiliating someone who'd done nothing but make him successful. The settlement check cleared the next day. $1.2 million sitting in my account, feeling simultaneously like justice and blood money. I stared at the $1.2 million in my account on my banking app, the numbers still feeling surreal. 6 months ago this would have been a fantasy. Now it was just a line item in a much larger story. Seed money for something that had already grown beyond my wildest expectations. The warehouse barely resembled the disaster we'd moved into half a year ago. The flickering fluorescence had been replaced with warm LED panels that Logan insisted were better for productivity and mental health. The suspicious stain was gone, covered by industrial epoxy flooring that Priya picked because it matched our logo colors. We had real furniture now, standing desks, ergonomic chairs, even a kitchen that didn't smell like decades of neglect. Mom, look. Emma, Logan's daughter, called from what we designated as the homework corner. She held up her math test. 98%. Priya helped me with the formulas last week. This had become our rhythm. Emma did homework here after school while Logan worked. The Morrison twins taught her coding basics. Sarah helped with her science projects. We weren't just a company. We'd become the family some of us never had, the support system corporate culture promised but never delivered. $75 million valuation as of this morning, Marcus announced, updating our celebration board. Yes, we had one of those now, covered in wins both big and small. And Richardson Industries just signed. That's 40 employees and 12 major clients. 40 employees. People who'd chosen us not for the stability, we were still a startup after all, but for the culture. They'd seen our press conference, heard about the walkout, knew exactly what we stood for. Every resume came with a note about wanting to work somewhere that valued people over profits. Priya's parents had visited last week from Mumbai, performing a traditional blessing ceremony in our conference room. Her mother had touched my shoulder and said, "You gave my daughter purpose beyond a paycheck. That's worth more than any valuation." I was reviewing contracts when the door opened. Taylor stood there looking like a ghost of the man I'd married. He'd lost weight but not in a healthy way, more like grief had been eating him from the inside. In his hand were papers I recognized immediately. Divorce documents. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. We went to the break room, the nice one with actual chairs and a coffee machine that worked. He sat across from me, the papers between us like a border we were about to formally recognize. "I've been in therapy," he said without preamble. "Twice a week for 4 months. Learning about family dynamics, enmeshment, enabling. Terms I didn't even know existed when we got married." "That's good, Taylor. I should have stood up for you." The words rushed out like they'd been building pressure. "That Tuesday when Dad humiliated you, I should have been in that boardroom defending you. Oh, I should have walked out with you. Instead, I came home and asked you to fix his mess. I chose comfort over courage, familiarity over what was right." He pushed the papers toward me. "I'm not asking for forgiveness or another chance. I know that ship has sailed. I wanted you to know that I understand now. What I lost. What I threw away because I couldn't stand up to my father." "Are you still at Vertex?" I asked. He laughed, but it was hollow. "Nobody's at Vertex. It got absorbed by Stratton Corp last month. They kept the patents and fired everyone else. Dad's reputation made sure nobody would buy it intact." We signed the papers in relative silence, just the scratch of pens and the hum of the coffee machine. In this same room where my team had planned Phoenix Digital's future, I was signing away the past. Taylor stood to leave, then turned back. "I hope you find someone who sees your worth immediately," he said. "Not after it's too late. Not after they've already lost you. Someone who stands up for you on Tuesday, not apologizes for it 6 months later." After he left, I sat there for a moment, feeling the weight of ending a marriage that had probably been over long before Nicholas gave me those 5 minutes. But there was peace in it too. Clean endings made room for better beginnings. Margaret appeared in the doorway. "You okay?" "Yeah. Just closing chapters." I stood, shaking off the melancholy. "What's up?" "Thought you should see this." She showed me her phone. Nicholas's LinkedIn profile, updated that morning. Independent business consultant, working from an address I recognized as a strip mall on the outskirts of town. His latest post was about leadership through adversity, and the importance of decisive action. 3 likes. I clicked on them. 2 were clearly bot accounts and 1 was from someone trying to sell him marketing services. That's sad, I said. That's consequences, Margaret corrected. He works alone from a rented office above a tax preparation service. No clients, no prospects, no future in tech. His reputation is so toxic that even desperate startups won't touch him. I thought about the Nicholas who'd stood at the head of his mahogany table, emperor of his domain, counting down my professional execution. Now he had infinite time and nothing to fill it with. No employees to terrorize, no board to impress, no family to come home to. Just an empty office and LinkedIn posts that nobody read. Do you feel bad for him? Margaret asked. No, I said honestly. I feel nothing. He's just a cautionary tale now. A footnote in Phoenix Digital's origin story. That afternoon we held our weekly all-hands meeting. Not in a sterile boardroom with people checking their phones, but in our open workspace with everyone genuinely engaged. The Morrison twins presented their new framework. Sarah outlined the client growth trajectory. Gerald, yes, he was our official chief morale officer now, announced Friday's team lunch. Looking at these 40 people who'd chosen to build something with us, I thought about those 5 minutes. How they'd seemed like an ending but were actually a beginning. Nicholas had given me 5 minutes to pack up my professional life. In return, I'd gained a real family, a company built on respect, and the knowledge that when you refuse to accept humiliation, you often find dignity waiting on the other side. Hey, Priya said, appearing beside me. Catherine Walsh just called. Bloomberg wants to do a feature on us. The company that rose from a 5-minute firing. I smiled. Tell them yes. But make sure they know, we're not the story of a firing. We're the story of what happens when good people refuse to let small people make them smaller. The warehouse hummed with productive energy. Somewhere across town, Nicholas sat in his strip mall office, probably refreshing his LinkedIn to see if anyone had liked his latest post about resilience. The difference between us wasn't that I'd won and he'd lost. It was that I'd learned 5 minutes could build an empire, while he was still trying to understand how 5 minutes had destroyed one. If this story of corporate karma had you rooting for justice, hit that like button right now. My favorite part was when 22 employees silently stood up and followed her out, turning a humiliation into a revolution. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more incredible revenge stories like this. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.